So I've got the diff center set up outside, folks. I'm just about to hook into it with a wire brush, or various wire brushes. That's the one that I'm sort of starting with down there. I'm just going to get all the surface rust and paint off this casing so that I can repaint it all. But the reason I'm doing it now is I'm about to take the back cover off and send it away to get vapor blasted. And I want all of this cleaned up and be painted by the time I get the cover back to put it on. So while it's still got the old cover on, I'm just going to go mad on it with a wire brush. Like I say, strip it all back and get it ready for paint. And that's just about done, folks. I'll give it a bit of a wipe over with some wax and grease remover and stuff, but as you can see, it's pretty much bare metal on the whole thing now, and it's looking pretty good to be prepped for paint. Obviously, you would have seen with the cover on the end of it, nothing's been done with the cover, because I mentioned that's coming off and you're going to get blasted. But you know, the diff casing and everything like that, looking pretty sweet. Bit of paint, we're good as gold. There it is, folks. Diff center's all painted up now. Turned out very well. So that's just painted in a single pack moisture cure urethane. Bloody good stuff. Really nice and hard. Yeah, just real nice stuff. It turned out very good. Very, very happy with it. It's upside down at the moment, obviously, but yeah, it turned out real nice. Beautiful. So next thing we've got to do is sort out the cover for the back. Cover's not on there at the moment. You can see that's just masked up to just keep it all nice and good in there. You can see the cover was on when it was painted. The cover was masked up. This has just been put on there to protect it from ingress of any dust or anything like that while the cover's off. Yeah, so cover's next. Diff cover's now off, folks. I'm just about to drop this in to get blasted. So, let's see how she turns out, eh? This will be very interesting. And there it is, folks. Done and dusted. Doesn't that look a damn sight better? So that's actually been sandblasted. We tried vapor blasting it, but it was too badly pitted, you know. Yeah, it just wasn't looking any good. So sandblasting's what we did. It's, I don't know. I don't mind it really. It's quite an open pore sort of a finish though. That's my only concern, but I don't mind the colour and all that sort of stuff. You know, it's just a basic blasted aluminium finish now. But yeah, it certainly looks a hell of a lot better than it did. I'll have a think about it, folks. I might paint it, I don't know, I might paint it silver or aluminium colour over the top just to make it look a little bit more natural. I don't know, or leave it like it is. I actually don't mind it, as I say. Anyway, we'll see. So I've also got to replate all the bolts. I've got a plating kit here where I can do like yellow zinc plating and stuff. So I'll replate all the bolts because they were all really rusty. And mate, she'll be all looking brand new again. I'll replate the sun plug as well. In you know, so it's got the gold passivated stuff on it. Anyway, yeah, very happy with how that turned out, folks. So after much deliberation, folks, I decided to leave the cover as it came out of the sandblaster, because I reckon it's just not too bad at all. So I've just finished putting the cover on, folks. That's your diff gasket part number there from Nissan. And I did use a bit of aviation gasket sealant. A bit of sort of Hyloma type gasket sealant there. It's just a non-setting thin liquid sort of a stuff just to sort of help bed the gasket in. I tend to use a little bit of that here and there just on sort of thin paper type gaskets, which is what it is. What else have I done with this thing? Okay, I've checked the diff center. The backlash is in spec. The gear pattern's good on the teeth. So I'm really not going to delve any further into the diff center itself. It is standard. It does appear to have the viscous limited slip diff in it in standard configuration. No idea what the bearing conditions are like, but I think everything seems okay. The fact that I haven't really driven it to assess much of the driveline or anything, it's really just something that I'm going to have to do once the car's together. At this stage, it's really more about just getting everything back together in a very respectable fashion and getting the car on the road so that we can then look at further modifications. Anyway, so the diff itself seems pretty good. It all looks really nice. You can see all the zinc plated gold passivated bolts that I did in an earlier video. I've also fitted a temperature sender unit to the differential, just so that I can keep an eye on the diff temps. I find it's a pretty handy sort of a tool. Diffs generally, and in particular sort of viscous diffs and that, they do run a bit warm, and if you kind of get them too hot, they don't really perform that well. So if you've got an idea of their temperature when you're sort of doing a bit of live action in the car, you can at least moderate yourself in relation to diff temperatures and stuff. But not that that's really that big a deal anyway, folks. But as you can see, she's just about ready to get mounted into the rear cradle, and I think that might be the next thing that we do. So I'll just go and set up the rear cradle, folks, and I think we'll look at mounting this guy back in. And there we go, folks. The time has come to put these two pieces together. It's going to be a little bit slow and steady on this end, folks, just because I want to be real careful of the paintwork and the powder coating, and, you know, just kind of set it up properly, make a few measurements as I do it. So what I'll do, I'll pull the camera back so you get a bit better view, and I will probably just speed the footage up so you guys don't have to put up with me working like an old man. Alright, I'll pull the camera back and I'll get into it. Right, folks, the first problem has reared its ugly head. The GKTech bushes at the back, the rear lower diff mounts, are completely wrong. Where the diff center is at the moment, it's actually sitting hard down on the chassis, but it hasn't bottomed down on the top of the diff mount, and the top bush is holding up the undermount. So basically it's like I've got to take 10mm off the bottom of the top bush, the top and bottom, because I'm working upside down here, and I've got to add 10mm to the other side of the bush, which is bloody typical with aftermarket stuff, honestly. This happens all the friggin' time. Oh yeah, it'll fit, it's for this car, it's for that car. Honestly, it's like these people have never ever tried to fit any of their own products into stuff, seriously. I don't know, got me beat, honestly. I'm really interested to see how the cradle mount bushes go too, because they're very different to the factory stuff, and I'm sure I'm going to have to machine spacers and all sorts of stuff with those as well. But anyway, this is what I've got to deal with at the moment, folks. I'll come up with a solution. I'm either going to have to machine the bushes down or do something. I'll dig the old ones out. I'm pretty sure I've still got one, and I'll do a bit of a comparison and just try and work out what the hell's going on and what the best way to fix it is. So I'll just turn the camera off for a sec, folks, and I'll be back. Alright, folks, I've solved the problem. Or sorry, I haven't solved the problem, but I've worked out what it is. And it's as I thought, the GKTech bush is completely wrong. The overall size is correct. It matches up to the original bush, but the offset is completely wrong. As you can see with the original bush, there's a big fat bit on the bottom and a thin bit on the top. And the GKTech bush is even top and bottom. So what that means is there's not enough height on the bottom to stop the diff center resting against the rear cradle. And this just flopping up in the air by about 7 millimeters. And then, you know, then this is too high, so the brace across the top won't clamp down. So basically, folks, what I've decided to do is I'm going to throw these things in the friggin' bin, and I'm just going to make my own. So, yeah, when I turn the camera back on, folks, I'll have made a new set of bushes, and we'll have a look at those. Alright, very disappointed. I'll be back. So there you go, folks. This is one of the finished bushes for the front diff mount on Project Fairlady, and that's how the sizing ends up there. You can see the difference there between the GKTech bush and my bush, as far as you know, all that sort of business. And what I'll do, I'm going to line them all up on the bench, folks, so you can see the standard bush, my bush, and the GKTech bush, and you tell me what's going on. And there we go, folks, that pretty much sums it up. So we've got the standard factory bush here, and as you can see, the top thickness is the same, the bottom thickness is the same as my bush. So you've got two of my bushes, and then you've got the GKTech bush there, and as you can see, the top's too fat and the bottom's too skinny. Without this thickness, this is why the diff center hits against the rear cradle before the bush bottoms out, because it needs that thickness there, just like the factory bush, so that the diff center doesn't bottom out on the rear cradle assembly. So I don't know, folks, I don't know what's going on. This is just a case of you know, designing a component for various Nissans of the same period and just assuming that it fits the Z32 twin turbo and never actually fitting one themselves. If that's the case, that's pretty lousy sort of R&D, isn't it? I don't know how you'd explain it. Maybe someone else can explain it to me. Once again, don't buy the GKTech solid bushes, guys, if you're going to be doing a Z32 twin turbo, because you can see the problem there. If you've got the capacity to make your own, well and good. There might be other brands out there that fit, but unless the bush looks like this, don't buy it. If it looks like that, forget it. If it looks like this, buy it. I have seen some of the polyurethane bushes on the market that do look like this, so you know, that's a positive thing. But then I've also seen some other manufacturers' solid bushes that look like that as well. So I don't know, maybe it's a non-turbo versus twin turbo thing. I don't know, folks. I have very limited experience with the Z32. Maybe you could let me know if the naturally aspirated version has a diff that's more suitable for this bush, or whether it's just, you know, they've designed that bush for, you know, S-series and R-series chassis and just gone, oh yeah, it'll fit the Z32 without even trying it. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I've ended up with, folks. My bushes fit perfectly. I've already test fitted them. There's the right amount of clearance between the differential and the rear cradle, just the same as there is with a factory bush. So all that's left to do now is to zinc plate these. You know, being that they're bare metal, I can either paint them or zinc plate them. Zinc plating's probably a better thing in this situation. I'm actually going to be setting up a batch of stuff anyway, and it's no real drama to just throw these in with and zinc plate them. So next time you see these guys, folks, they'll be zinc plated and they'll be ready to sort of go in. As I mentioned, I've taken another look at the rear cradle or rear subframe to body mount bushings that I got from GKTech. They're not right either. I've already worked out one way of adjusting those, and then I've kind of canned it and I've gone for something else, and I'm just trying to hit on the right thing at the moment that sort of works the best. I have a solution that works to modify that bush to make it fit, but it kind of creates a problem in another area, and I've got a little bit of an idea that I can use that'll cure both problems at once. But I would advise you to stay away from the GKTech rear cradle urethane mounts as well, because they don't fit either, guys. Same issue. They've obviously designed them for R or S series chassis and then just assume they're going to fit the Z. Again, maybe it's a non-turbo thing, but I don't know, folks. It's really starting to depress me. I've come across so many issues with the Z32 in relation to aftermarket components that are supposedly bolt-in fits, and like a lot of aftermarket stuff is. And as you know, if you've been dealing with this sort of stuff for a long time, it's pretty rare to actually get something that fits. So pretty typical, really. Anyway, just quickly, folks, I'll just insert this bit of footage here. I got all excited. I just finished zinc plating and gold passivating these solid diff mount bushes that I made. Just thought I'd give you a bit of a look at them. They turned out really good. Very happy with them. Alright, and here they are in position, folks. I don't think you can see the one on that side, but you can see we've got our thick guy on the top and our super thin one on the bottom. And we'll just go around the other side and I'll show you exactly why they need to be this size. So if we come in over the back of the diff, folks, at the top, you can see this is the point here where all the clearance problems arise. The way that's sitting there with my bush, which is exactly the same size as the factory bush, there's about 2 mil, 2.5 mil clearance maybe, between the differential housing here and the top of the rear cradle cross member there. So you can see with any less thickness in that top bush, you're going to hit here, which was exactly the problem with the GKTech bush. Yeah, which is why it just simply doesn't work. So yeah, I don't know how people have managed to make it work, unless they've maybe had an NA diff that is maybe a bit physically smaller and doesn't take up all the space that there is. But you would assume that it would upset the pinion angle of the diff regardless, because obviously it's not just the clearance. Like if you move the diff at all, you're changing the pinion angle, you know, which is obviously something that you don't want to do. So yeah, you can see it for yourself, folks. That's why I went to all the trouble to machine the bushes to the right size and all that sort of thing. Alright, folks, I might just shoot across to some footage that I shot earlier of the modifications that I had to make to these urethane rear cradle mounts. So I'll just flick to that footage right now. Alright, folks, so as promised, this is some footage that I took earlier of when I modified the GKTech rear cradle to body mount urethane bushes. Now, let's start talking some measurements. So the receiver that the bush goes in on your rear subframe is 64 millimeters in height. You know, the bit that hangs off the subframe that's round, that looks like a little can, it's 64 millimeters in height. And this is the configuration of your standard GKTech polyurethane bush for the rear cradle on the Z32. So you have two different size flanges on here. This one to the top gives you a bit of roll center correction. This one on the top supposedly gives you a standard height configuration, which I would assume that it does. So the issue is the distance between these two pieces of urethane here, as we shall see, is only 52.7 millimeters. Okay, so as I said, the piece that it has to go into in the chassis is 64 millimeters. So straight away we've got a mismatch. We're short by about 10 mil. So it's like, okay, well, can't we just kind of leave them hanging out a bit and have a bit of a gap in the middle? Well, you could, but, and here's the but, folks, the sleeve that runs through the middle is only long enough, as you can see here, to go like yo. If you put those into the chassis so that these flanges bottom out and there's a 10 mil gap in the middle, then to get the nuts to tighten down onto this, right, because that's what happens when you slide these over the spigots that hang down in the chassis. The nuts wind up until they bottom out on this, and that compresses the rubber, and then that's how you get your torque wrench setting, by compressing the nut up against this sleeve. So in order for that to happen, you have to compress this urethane 10 millimeters before that happens. And now there's no way in the world you're going to compress this 10 millimeters against these flanges on the edge, alright? Just not going to happen. It's the wrong friggin' size. So I thought, okay, well, how can I get around this? No worries, I know what I'll do. So I machined up some 10 mil spacers out of Delrin. So now, what I have in here is 63. And as I said, 64, that gives me a millimeter of compression. Perfect. But it still doesn't solve the problem of the sleeve being too short. Okay, so I machined up some 10 mil spacers. So now we have the right size, the right size bush, and the spacer is now the right size, so that when it will compress down without having to distort the crap out of the bush. Fantastic. But it creates another problem, folks. On the front of the rear cradle, you have these brackets that are designed to tie the sill into the rear cradle assembly front mount. Okay, so this has to go, onto the bottom of this, like this, and then has to tie back into the frame rail. But because this is now too low, then it means that this guy needs a 10 mil spacer on it so that this can go back together. It's just a never-ending story. And part of the problem is, folks, that this is a retainer that you have on the rear of the subframe mount, and this is the bracket that you have on the front of the subframe mount. With the factory bushes, this is designed to go up inside and retain the bush that way. The factory bush has a recess in it for this to go into, and as you can see from the GKTech bushes, they're completely flat. So you're starting to lose length on the stud that sticks out with the amount of thread that's available for the nut to go on. You obviously want the nut to be fully seated on the thread because it is a locking sort of a style nut as well. So you want those locking tabs on the very top edge of the nut to be actually engaged into the thread. So, and plus, this is damned ugly. There's obviously a flat washer that GKTech supply to go over this as well, but what they sort of show in their installation video, which they use for a Z32, which doesn't actually show a Z32, I'm sure it's an R-Series Skyline that they've got in the video, which is what I think these are designed for. They show it just being stuck on like that, which is hideous. It's a place for shit to get caught in, and it just looks friggin' stupid. So, doesn't work. Just the whole thing just doesn't work. So what I thought is, yep, I'll make up some Delrin spacers to go over the top of this, so that when that goes on, it all looks sort of pretty neat and tidy, Yep, no worries, sort of problem solved. But again, I'm in a position where I have to make up a spacer for this. So that was my first thing that I did, folks. That was the first solution that I came up with. 10 mil spacer in the center. Sorry, that's not the piece. That goes with that. We'll just get rid of this for a second. So this was the first, and I've put so much time into this, folks. What a friggin' huge waste of time. So that was the first thing. 10 mil spacer in that. 10 mil spacer on top of the sleeve here to extend it through, which works as in it fits up into the sleeve and everything. But the problem is you run out of thread. With full engagement, like with the nut sort of torqued up, you're basically only just engaging on that last bit of thread with the sort of, like you've got full engagement with the nut, but just, you really need that that locking section on the top of the nut to be down a couple of threads. And I thought, well, this is shit. I'm just not happy with this. This doesn't work. So the combination of that and then having to space the side rail bracket down, I just thought, no, this is friggin' garbage, you know. So this is the Mark II version, folks. This is what I've done now. So I've basically gotten this bush with the fat piece on the top, and I've turned it down on the lathe, which may I say is no mean feat, trying to actually cut this urethane cleanly on the bush. Took quite a bit of lateral thinking to be able to actually do it on the lathe, because the lathe tooling just wants to sort of push the rubber away. It doesn't want to sort of cut it. So I've taken 10mm off that, and then in combination with the other piece, that now gives me, I think, where are we? That gives me 62mm. So that's around around 2mm of compression when run against this. Now this is still the correct size because we haven't changed the length of that. So we've now just made the bush compress together further, so the two halves actually push together as they should do, instead of having a 10mm gap between them, and the sleeve is the correct length. So we can, now this actually works without having to space it 10mm. So that means I've gotten back the 10mm which I was going to need to space these guys down. I've got 10mm more of thread engagement on the stud to get the nut onto, which works really well for me. So that's what I've had to do, folks, and that's been my final solution. Like I say, I've ended up having to turn just that top section down there. So with all the woes that I've had now, folks, between the GKTech solid diff mounts, which didn't work, were nothing like it, and now the rear cradle mounts, which don't work either, you know, I'm really disappointed in their products, and more than anything, I'm disappointed in their customer service. It's the worst customer service that I think I've ever received in my life from any manufacturer. So anyway, GKTech don't have a phone number. They have no phone number available anywhere for any support of any kind of their products. So what they have is one of these web-based talky things where you get on their website and a little thing pops up and it says, "Hi, have you got a question?" I'm just like, what the fuck? So I'm thinking, all right, okay. So I type into this thing, "Oh, I've got a question about your bushes and blah, 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 blah. That'd be great if you could, you know, if I could talk to someone about these issues I'm having with your bushes." No one responded to it. Ever. So I'm thinking, right, well, this is really crap. How the hell am I going to contact these guys? And I thought, I wonder if they've got a Facebook page. So then I go to Facebook Messenger. So then I sent them a message on Facebook Messenger. And I said, look, I've got issues. I need someone to talk to about this. It's a technical problem. You know, it'd be great if I could get a phone number. So could you just reply with a phone number to me so I can actually talk to someone in your R&D department, or talk on a bit of a technical level to someone, you know? So then I get a message back saying, "Oh no, we're out of business hours. If you'd like to contact us again between the hours of blah blah and blah blah, between 9 and 5, and this was at like 4:30, right? So it's like, oh yeah, business hours, eh? What business hours are you in? So that was it. No more response after that. So I'm thinking, okay, all right, well, let's see where this goes. So the next day I write them a really detailed message, laying out all the issues that I had. Not particularly with the rear cradle bushes. I thought I would start with the diff bushes because, you know, I figured, you know, two different problems is going to confuse them. So I started with the diff bushes, telling them about how the offset's wrong, you know, the diameter's correct and the overall height's correct, but the offset's wrong and this and that, and, you know, once again saying I'd really like to be able to talk to someone about this. So then when I'm at work that day, I get a ding on my phone, Facebook Messenger, and it's a reply from GKTech, and it's like a generic answer, and I'm just like, you're fucking kidding me. And they also say, it's our policy not to have a phone number. We don't like to communicate with our customers via telephone. We're not giving you a phone number, blah, blah, blah. And they said, it sounds to me like your problem is you need to buy some of our GKTech rear crossmember spacers or something like this, which is a spacer that they have for Nissan Skyline GTRs to change the angle of attack of the rear cradle and stuff. And it's like, piss off. I'm not even talking about rear cradle bushes, we're talking about diff bushes. I thought, this is ridiculous, you know, they're just trying to direct me to their website to buy more shit, didn't address any questions that I asked them, and just basically fobbed me off in the fact that they refused to give me a phone number when I'd now asked several times. And I just thought, okay, alright. So, yeah, basically, I'm never ever going to buy another product off GKTech as long as I live, because, not because of the issues with their product, because everyone can make mistakes, there can always be issues, but the fact that they have absolutely no customer service, and they really weren't willing to kind of sort anything out. I am using all their spherical bushings in the rear uprights and stuff. You see me press those in. They all fit. There doesn't seem to be any issues with them. The quality of the product seems really good. There's no issue with that. All of their products seem to be of a pretty good quality. I've already got a ton of stuff here. I've got upper control arms and I've got bits for the front and stuff, which I'm sort of stuck with using now. But I guess we'll get to those and see how well they fit as the project sort of moves into that area. But at this stage, their rear diff bushes and their rear cradle bushes don't fit at all. Worst customer service in the world, and as I said, I'll never buy anything from them again. You guys make your own decisions based on this, but yeah, if I'd have known that they don't have any customer service, that they don't even have a phone number, I never would have bought anything off them to begin with, because for me, that basically is just a kick in the ass for your customers to say, we've got your money and we don't care about you now. So yeah, that's what's been going on, folks. So you can see where I'm at. So I have managed to machine these to make them fit well enough that I can use them. But again, I've got them here, and I sort of like a challenge, you know. I don't know, I'm an idiot, I guess. Wanting to see if I could actually make something fit that doesn't fit, but I think I've managed to do it. But anyway, folks, we might as well just go back to the rear cradle assembly, and I'll probably, at this stage, I'll probably have these already mounted in, and maybe I'll still be ranting, maybe I won't, but I'll see you back at the rear cradle assembly. Alright folks, here we are back at the rear axle assembly. Apologies for the rant, there was actually a lot more to it than that. I cut a whole heap of it out because I don't want to get sued. As you can see, it really sort of frustrated me. But anyway folks, you know, that's car building, and unfortunately that's the sort of crap that you've got to deal with if you want the good cars. So I was really hoping that we'd actually get the rear axle assembly in on this video, but as you can see, from all the delays and hold-ups and everything that have gone on, it just hasn't been possible. I'm actually still waiting on a couple of other pieces as well. There's some brake line clips that I have ordered in for up here that aren't quite here yet. So hopefully next week we'll be putting the thing in. So as always folks, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. Bloody pleasure to have you here. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Remember to hit the bell so you get notifications of any new videos that come out and all that wonderful stuff. And as always, folks, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.